There are television partnerships that work not because of clever writing rooms or perfect production budgets, but because two people stand in front of a camera and something undeniable sparks between them. For nearly a decade, John Goodman and Roseanne Barr were exactly that kind of partnership. Together, they built something that tens of millions of Americans invited into their living rooms every single week. And they did it by being brutally honest about what ordinary family life actually looked like. But what audiences watched on screen was only part of the story. Behind the cameras, things were far more complicated. And years after the show ended, was revived, and then collapsed a second time under circumstances nobody could have predicted, John Goodman has gradually revealed what he believes truly destroyed Roseanne forever. Understanding what ended the show requires first understanding what made it matter. When Roseanne premiered in 1988, it landed on American television like almost nothing audiences had encountered before. The sitcom landscape at that time was filled with idealized families navigating comfortable problems that resolved within 30 minutes and left everyone feeling reassured and warm. Roseanne did none of that. Set in the fictional town of Lanford, Illinois, the series followed the Connor family, a working-class household where money was always tight, arguments were real, and the future was never promised. Dan Connor worked construction. Roseanne Connor worked in a salon and later a plastics factory. Their problems were the problems millions of Americans recognized from their own kitchens and living rooms, and that recognition was what turned the show into something much larger than a weekly comedy. John Goodman came to the role of Dan Connor with years of serious theatrical training behind him. He had done substantial stage work before Hollywood paid real attention, and when Barr's show needed someone to play her husband, producers found in Goodman an actor whose instincts matched what the role required. Dan Connor was not a hero in the traditional television sense. He was large, funny, stubborn, tender, and entirely human, a man trying to hold a complicated family together on a limited income. Goodman understood that character from the beginning, and from early in production, he and Barr developed a working relationship that translated directly and visibly onto the screen. Goodman has described their connection as something that happened quickly and naturally. They made each other laugh without effort, and that genuine ease between them was something cameras could not fake and audiences immediately recognized. The ratings reflected it. At its peak, Roseanne was drawing audiences of between 20 and 30 million viewers per episode, placing it consistently among the highest-rated programs in the country. Goodman earned a Golden Globe for his portrayal of Dan Connor, and the recognition was deserved. The show offered something rare in mainstream television, an honest weekly portrait of working-class American life during a period when that kind of representation was almost entirely absent from the networks. The cast built genuine relationships during those years, and Goodman has pointed to that era as one of the most personally meaningful of his professional life. However, what the public saw and what was happening privately were two separate stories. As the show's fame grew, Goodman found himself increasingly uncomfortable with the specific kind of attention that came with being one of the most recognizable faces on American television. He has spoken in interviews about how the loss of his anonymity affected him in ways he did not anticipate or know how to manage. Simple things became complicated. Routines required navigation. The initial excitement of recognition slowly transformed into a persistent pressure that followed him regardless of where he went or what he was doing. And while his professional reputation was growing, something else was developing behind the scenes that he could not easily control. Goodman has been candid in multiple interviews about his battle with alcohol during and after the original run of the series. He has described drinking as something that began as a form of social release and gradually became a force that organized his daily life in ways he did not choose. The pressures of production, the grinding schedule, and the constant way of public attention all fed into a pattern that worsened over time. There were periods during filming when the problem became visible to people working around him. He has acknowledged that there were moments when his condition on set was not something he could fully conceal, and that the people close to him during production were aware that something was wrong. The moment that changed his direction came after a particularly difficult stretch. He has described the physical reality of withdrawal, the shaking, the inability to stabilize, and the sudden clear recognition that it moved well past the point where personal discipline alone could correct the problem. That recognition led him to seek professional treatment. Goodman has never spoken about that decision in dramatic terms. He has described it simply as necessary, something he had to do before the consequences became permanent. What followed was a long commitment to sobriety that he has maintained for years, and that he credits with preserving not only his career, but his marriage to his wife Annabeth, and his overall health. When the original series concluded in 1997, Goodman stepped back from Hollywood in meaningful ways. He and Annabeth eventually relocated to New Orleans, a city he had developed a deep affection for over the years. The move was more than a change of scenery. It was a deliberate choice to build a life outside the entertainment industry's daily machinery, to exist somewhere with its own identity and culture rather than a city defined entirely by show business. He continued acting in the years that followed, taking on film and television roles, but his relationship to fame had shifted permanently. He was no longer chasing the center of things. For more than 20 years, Roseanne existed only in syndication and in the memories of the people who had lived it. Then, as the television industry moved through a sustained period of nostalgia, and network executives began seriously exploring the revival of beloved titles, discussions about bringing the Connor family back began to take shape. The announcement generated enormous public response. People who had grown up watching the show were now adults with their own families, and the possibility of revisiting those characters was something many viewers found genuinely exciting. Even the cast members who might have approached the idea cautiously found themselves pulled back in. Goodman has acknowledged that he went into the revival with limited expectations. He did not believe at the outset that it would become anything more than a brief reunion, a handful of episodes that would give longtime fans a moment of nostalgia before ending quietly. What actually happened surprised almost everyone involved. The 2018 revival premiere drew massive audiences and reignited conversations about the show's core themes, demonstrating that its honest treatment of working-class anxiety, economic pressure, and family tension remain as relevant as ever. ABC moved to renew the series for another season almost immediately. For a short but genuine window, it appeared that the Connors had pulled off something rare in television history. That window closed in the spring of 2018. Roseanne Barr posted a comment on social media targeting Valerie Jarrett, who had served as a senior advisor during the Obama administration. The backlash arrived within hours and spread rapidly. The post was condemned across news platforms and social media simultaneously, and pressure on ABC to respond mounted quickly. The network did not take long. It canceled the revival and described Barr's comments in its official statement as contrary to its values. The cancellation stunned the industry partly because of how well the show had been performing and how recently the network had committed to its continuation. For the cast and crew, the shutdown came with almost no time to process what had happened. Goodman has said that in the period following the cancellation, he genuinely believed the franchise was finished. He moved forward with other work, including his role in The Righteous Gemstones, and accepted that Dan Connor's story had ended. The idea of continuing without Barr did not strike him as realistic. She had created the show. Her name had been on it from the first episode. Her voice and perspective had shaped everything the audience loved about it. Without her, nothing meaningful seemed possible. That assumption turned out to be wrong. Conversations between ABC and the remaining cast produced a plan to move forward under a new title. The Connors launched in late 2018, opening with the revelation that Roseanne Connor had died from an opioid overdose, a storyline that reflected a crisis affecting real American families, and that established a continuation as something separate from what came before. What nobody could confidently predict at that point was how long it would last. The Connors ran for 7 seasons, concluding in 2025. And throughout those years, Goodman served as the emotional center of the series, guiding Dan Connor through grief, aging, and the continuing complexities of working-class family life. What did not survive any of this was a relationship between Goodman and Barr. In interviews over the years, Goodman has confirmed that the two have not spoken in approximately 7 or 8 years. When asked directly whether he maintains any contact with her, his answer has been straightforward. He has said that he doubts she wants to hear from him. He has offered no extensive explanation for that belief, but the statement itself communicates something real about where things stand. What sets Goodman's public comments about Barr apart is their consistent emotional tone. He has not expressed anger. He has not positioned himself as wronged or taken public shots at her character. Instead, he has said repeatedly that he misses her, that he cares about her, and that from his personal experience with her during the years they worked together, he knows she is not the figure the harshest readings of the 2018 controversy portrayed. These are not the statements of someone managing a public image or navigating a dispute strategically. They reflect something more honest, the sadness of losing a friendship that was real and that cannot be easily recovered. Barr's position has been different. She has confirmed that she no longer has relationships with her former co-stars and has expressed real anger about how things ended. Watching her character killed off and seeing the franchise she created continue without her under a different name was not something she accepted or made peace with quietly. She has stated bluntly that the people she worked with for years are no longer part of her life. When Goodman has been asked what he would say to Barr if he saw her today, his answer has been disarmingly simple. He said he would say hello and ask how she was doing. No confrontation, no settling of scores, just a basic human greeting from someone who once shared something meaningful with another person and has not stopped caring about them across years of silence. That answer reveals more about how he has processed everything than any longer statement could. What Goodman has come to understand, based on everything he has said across years of interviews, is that Roseanne's end was never really about one moment or one decision. It was about the fragility of the particular combination of people, trust, and shared history that made the show work. Chemistry between performers is not something that can be manufactured or transferred to a replacement. The audience loved Roseanne because it was honest, and what made it honest was a specific group of people who committed to that honesty together. Once that group fractured, the original thing was gone, even if a continuation existed under a different name and ran for years. Goodman has said more than once that viewers connected with the Connor family because they saw their own lives reflected in it. Not an idealized version, not a comfortable fantasy, but something close to the real texture of ordinary American life. That kind of reflection requires everyone involved to trust each other fully. When that trust is broken, something that cannot be rebuilt disappears. And according to John Goodman, that is what truly ended Roseanne forever. Not a tweet, not a cancellation, not a network statement, but the permanent fracture in the relationships that made the whole thing possible in the first place. What do you think? Is there any version of events where John Goodman and Roseanne Barr find their way back to friendship, or has too much happened for that to ever be realistic? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what we cover next. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.